Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. So this is a tutorial for list and map in Dart for Flutter development, and in this tutorial I'll show you what is list and map and some of their properties, as well as when to use them, at least two most common cases where we use in Flutter. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Now here I have this this thing here. Well, one thing though, I'm not going to use high terminology. I'll just keep it very simple so that everybody understands, especially the beginners. Okay, now here I have declared a variable. It's called map obj, and it's wrapped around curly braces, and inside we have this thing. Now two things to important and two things to take note. You see the curly braces and this format. Okay, this is what it makes it a map or map object. You can understand it like this: the curly braces and key value pair. So this is more like JavaScript JSON object. Okay, it's almost the similar the format. So to me, I understand map is another JavaScript JSON object. Okay, JSON object also has key pair values. Okay, mostly on the left side, these are the keys, and on the right side for each key there is a value. Okay, key means that you can use this to access this value. You can understand it like this. Okay, and most of the time, mostly the keys are in string format, as you can see. They could be also object format. Okay, but most of the time they are strings. And now on the right side, they could be anything. It could be string, could be integer, or object. Well, in our case we don't have object, but you understand the concept. Okay, so this two most basic thing makes it like a map. So whenever you see things like that, you have to understand it is a map based on this curly braces and the key pair value. Okay, that's what makes it map. All right, so well, now we declared it here like this, or created this object, but there are a few other different ways to create. I'll go ahead and create them. Okay, so next one is creating from directly map class. Okay, I'll call it map obj1, and this is the map class. Okay, from here you can create it. And how about the values and keys? Well, you need to fill in them manually. So I'll just copy this one over here and I'll put it here. And now the key, we can have any key name here as we want, doesn't matter. So I'll keep it name for now, and I'll call it assign a value. And the same for the second one on the age. So try to use a different age. And the third one, country. Oops. China. All right, so this is the second way of declaring a map object. Okay, from using map class, not like this. Okay, so first way you can create like this. Whenever you see things like this, you know it is a map object. And the same over here, if you see it created from new map, or the value has been instantiated and has been filled in manually, so that's also map object. Okay, now we can verify that they're all the same thing, so we could do print over here. All right, so I'm going to print the first one, this one over here. Let's see the result. Okay, so you see the result is with key and value, and at the same time they're in curly braces. All right, now over here we can print this second one. Okay, so second one is map object 1. Let's print it out as well. Okay, yes, so they're same. You see the format is same, so they're all map object. Well, there is another way to create map object. So let's go ahead and create it. And this is using pretty much what we did early together, actually. So let me explain to you. Okay, now over here, this string, this one and this one refers to key and value. So string refers to this one, or this things over here, and dynamic refers to the right side. Now here we mentioned our keys explicitly to be string, and over here we want to do the same thing, so that's why we wrote here string. And as I said, this refers to the right side. Now right side could be anything, string, integer, object, so that's why we have dynamic. But if you're sure all of them are object, so you'd write here whatever object you have. If you know all of them are integer, over here the left side, so you can also declare here as int. Anyway, so this is the new map object. So what do we want? We want our key to be string and value to be dynamic. That means it could be anyone. It could be string, integer, or object. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill in them dynamically. So that's what I could do here. Now instead of 1, we'd do 2. Okay. All right, and just to be different, so let's just change the age and things like that, say 31. All right, now we'll print all of them. So let's see the result. Okay, so this is the first one over here, this is the second one over here, and this is the third one from here. So as you can see, whatever the way you create them, eventually they have the same format. Okay, whenever you print them or deal with them, so internally they have the same format. Okay, it's all key and value pair. All right, anyway, so we'll just stick with the first one over here. We don't need this one. Okay, so this is the 3 ways that you can create any map object. There could be more, but this 3 I found. All right, so they're all common. Okay, but we'll stick with this one for now. And there is a reason why we'll stick with this one. We'll see it later down the road. Okay, now here's one thing. So map has some interesting properties and functions that we can use, and we have to use them. Well, just now we use them in the print method, right? But of course in real life mostly you don't use the print, but print is useful for debugging. So in real life, if you have a map object, you want to go over the keys and values using a loop. Okay, so map object, if you created a map object, it provides some access to some properties. So one of them is called forEach. So we can access forEach. Now forEach takes 2 values. The first one is key and the second one is value. Okay, well, now do remember that the first item here refers to the key, second item refers to the value, but you can name them anything you want. They don't have to be key or value, but this is the general convention. Okay, anyway, so now over here you can just print the keys. All right, let's go ahead and run it. So we have the keys. Of course, you can also print the values. So we'll see. Sorry, we are missing a semicolon. Okay, so we'll see our keys and values down there. Okay, so that's how you can access them. But once again, in real life, definitely you do something over here based on this value or key. Okay, it's up to you how you use them. All right, so that's the first way that we can use. All right, and now there is another way that we can go over them and do whatever we want. So map object, that's called entries. Okay, well, there are a lot of properties that you can use. A lot of them make sense when you look at them. So we'll see some of the common one that we often use. And now entries also has forEach. Okay, now over here it just takes one parameter. Okay, like you can call it anything. In our case, we call it entry. So now let's go ahead and print entry and see the result. Okay, so it's saying it's returning or printing object. At the same time, it's saying there's a map entry. Okay, now let's see if we can access some of the properties from here. So as you can see, if you put dot here, you'll see key and value, key value. Okay. Oh, by the way, if you want to follow along with me, this with this online editor, just go over here and follow along with me. It's an online editor. Okay, anyway, so over here, so do key, so you can print the key values, so they're almost similar. Okay, yeah, so as you can see here, these are the last three because we are just printing keys. Well, now over here, this entries, this part is pretty important. Why? Because it provides some useful methods. One of them is forEach, and there is another one which most likely you will use a lot if you develop a Flutter app. So that's called map. Okay, yeah. Now map also takes parameters, so anything you want you can pass to it. All right, and within map you can also print things the way you want. Okay, we do entry dot, let's see, this time we'll print the values. Okay, now here we'll create a new line object or new line, otherwise they're getting messed up together. All right, now let's run. So here, but here, let me see, I'll just write here new line. Okay, that's all. And now let's see something's interesting. Anyway, so you see the new line over here, but don't see any printed value, right? So it's all empty. Why? Well, now once you use map over here, this function .map, what it does, it creates, I would say that it's in the memory, but it's not like a list. Okay, which means that it's not indexable. Okay, because a list is indexable, but in our case it's not. Okay, so it's not being indexed, so that's why it's not returning. So you could also understand it's pretty much in a random order. Whatever it tried to do there inside this map method, it created a massive random order, so that's why it's not returning anything. So you have to make it in random order, and in general we use another method. It's called toList. So what it does, this toList method, from this map function, well, it creates orderly things, or that you can iterate through, you can loop through, or you can access them using index, things like this. So that's the basic understanding. Now, regardless, whatever it is, if you use map, if you want to get the value, you must use toList. Otherwise, the values all are in memory, but it doesn't get you. You want them, but it doesn't get you. Okay, so to get the value, or to use in other places, you must return with toList, and then you'd be able to see them. Let's go ahead and print one more time. So slow now here. So this is our new line, and as you see, we printed the values. Okay, yeah. So that's what we are able to do that. So if you don't have it, won't print anything. Now, interestingly enough, all of them over here, actually you can also use return statement and save the values somewhere you want. In this case, we'll save it over here in a new variable called new object. We'll call it new object, and so it's a return statement, as you can see, because we have equal sign. So we'll return something. What do we return? We'll just return entry, and of course, after returning, we want to print new obj. Let's go ahead. Okay, now this is pretty interesting. Now it returns something within this second square brackets, as you can see, or the third brackets. So this is very important. Take care of this brackets over here. Let's look at this, which is different than this one, right? Earlier we printed them and it returned things within curly braces. Anyway, we can just return the value, I guess. So let's go ahead and return the value over here, and it will save it in this object or variable, and we print it. Let's see. Yes, interesting, right? Yeah. So this is called list. Okay, so far we are doing good. So we started with map, now we are ending up with list. Okay, of course here, as you see, we turned whatever happening was there, turned it to a list. Okay, so in Flutter or Dart, if you see things wrapped around this square brackets or third brackets, definitely you should know that they are list. Okay, that's quite interesting, right? Okay, anyway, to get a better view, first I'll print new object, and at the same time what we did early, I also print that one, and I'll call it map obj equal, and let's go ahead and print it. So there's two. So first one within square brackets, that's called list. The second one is a map. So whenever you see things like this, you get to know that. So it's the list, it's the map. Okay, so now we are clear about list and map ideas. Now regarding list, you can also declare your own list. All right, so I'll get rid, I guess, all of this. We don't need them now. Okay, now you can declare your own list. So you'll just call a variable list, and you can declare whatever you want here. So you could say Ahmed, say 30, and say China, like that. Okay, and now here you can also print a list. All right, so let's see. And here we go. So this is for comparison. So this is the map new object, which is also list type, but this is coming from after converting from map object to list object. We get this one, and this is our map object, which we declared early over here, printed result, and this is the one we manually declared a list. Okay, so what do we understand from here? Whether you convert your list from a map or you declared your own map, they have the same format. It's quite important. Okay, and the same for map object. Okay, yeah. Now this is the basic idea that we learned about map. And another thing is that you can also loop through list if you want. You can use forEach loop or for loop, say for where I equals 0 and I is less than list.length, and then you could do I plus plus, and then you could do print, and the list based on index, you can print whatever you want. Okay, let's go ahead and run it. So if you have a list, that's pretty much like you can list through them, okay, in a for loop. So it's more like an array, the basic array. I think you should know, all of you should know what is an array. So list becomes more like an array, but exactly, they're not totally the same, but at least on the surface it looks so. All right, yeah. So this is our list. Now if we can do another thing, so here I have these two objects, right? Yeah. Well, now this is the map object and this is the list object. So what we could do, we could create another map object. All right, and I'll call it map object 1, and I'll just say here, I'll say India. All right, and I'll get rid all of these things. Okay, so now let's see. So these are all map objects, so we can let's see, map object 1. Okay, fine. Now we can add map objects to a list. Okay, so we'll have var list. So with this we declared an empty list. Okay, now we can add them to list. How can you do that? We do list.add. It is a method add. All right, now definitely you could add map obj. The first time this is the first map we added. We can also add a second one. So we'll just copy paste, and instead of doing, so we'll add 1. So now we added 2 map object in our list. Now we can print the list, and let's see the result. Okay, so as you can see, so list has inside map object. Okay, so I understand it more like combination of list and map, even though this is the list object, but I understand it like it's list contains map. So understanding matters, how you understand. So now here definitely we can also do for loop here. So int I equals 0, I less than list dot length, and I plus plus. Now let's go ahead and print our list based on index. So let's see what happens. Okay, so we are printing them, right? Printing them based on index. All right, so now over here, let's see if we can access some properties like map, name. So we are just printing the name. So once you have things in a list, so and they're in this kind of format, you can access using the keys. These are the keys in the map object. You should understand that. So when it comes over here, all the maps are inserted into a list. Now you can access them inside using index, and at the same time you can access the properties of the map, okay, using property. Well, you can do a lot more thing. Anyway, so now after saying all of this thing, why it's important, okay? Yeah, so if you ever developed Flutter app, you'd see that a lot of time we create a class as a model. Okay, that's what we'll do. Okay, so we'll first declare a class outside of our main function, and we'll call it user, and say we'll give it some properties, string name, and int age, and string say location. All right, now here we'll create our constructor. We'll do this dot name, this dot age, this dot location. Yes. Okay, now this is the model we have, user class. And why we need a model in Flutter application? If you have data that you want to store in memory, most of the time you want to create a model and use that model to create an object from your data and save it in the database. Once again, in Flutter, if you want to save data in the database, so first you want to create a model, then you use that model, create object, and use that object to save in the database or store somewhere. It doesn't have to be database, you can store somewhere. All right, so that's why we need it. So our model has three properties: name, age, and location. So once we save the data to database, we can retrieve them, and we can retrieve each of the item as we want, and we can do whatever we want with them. Anyway, so now I'll go ahead and create an object. I'll call user1. Okay, and I'll create an object from it. So I'll apply name over here, say Dylan, and age 30, and location say Shanghai. All right, okay, now we create, now with this there is this user object, and we can print user object 1, and we'll see what happens. Okay, now it says instance of user. Okay, now how about if I want to access these values? Okay, can we do that? Now say Dylan, so try Dylan. It's silly, but try it anyway. Of course you'll get an error. Okay, or you can think, yeah, I have here name, so let's try name over here and see. Now you can't do any of those things. So you created the object, but you can't use it. What's the point? You can't retrieve any of the data. Now here map comes us to rescue. Okay, because now before we save it, well, we created it, right? Yeah, and we want to use it. Okay, so before you can go ahead and use it later, first you need to convert this data to map object. Okay, remember, map object has key and value. So right now we actually have the keys over here, values. These are the values, right? But we don't have key. Because we don't have key, we can't do things like this. User1, say key name is name, but we don't have here any key. What I'm doing here, all I'm doing, I'm applying or giving some values to the constructor, but the values it saves in the memory, but it doesn't know how to save it in the memory. Okay, yeah, even if it saves, you can't retrieve it. Retrieve based on what? You don't have any reference. So that's why we need key attached with these things. Okay, so you can create object without keys, but if you want to use them later efficiently, you need keys. Okay, yeah. Anyway, so let's go ahead and create a map object for our constructor or for our model. Okay, for our model, let's go ahead and create, and it's pretty easy to do that. So how to do that? So first you'll call map, as we said earlier that you can create map object 3 different ways. So now here we are creating one, and now we want our keys to be string like we saw earlier. Okay, so string. Now we want our value to be dynamic, could be anything, dynamic. Okay, yeah. So now over here, let's see, we'll call a method name is, you could call it anything, but the convention is a lot of them call it JSON. Okay, so we are calling it JSON. So this is a method, and method would return something, and what it would return a map object. Remember we saw earlier that we can create map object of this type. Okay, now here this is a method, and this method is returning a map object. Okay, yeah, and now it says my key is string and values could be anything. Okay, so now let's go ahead and define the keys. All right, so well, definitely for this one, this is a name, so we'll apply it as name. And how about the value? Now the value, once you pass down from here, the values are saved in these variables. So for name, I'll assign as name, and for second one, I'll create a key as name, as age, and I'll assign the age variable. And for this one, say you want to assign as a country the key, doesn't matter, they don't have to have the same kind of name or variable name. They look almost same, right? Well, they are same, but you can have a different key than the variable name itself. Anyway, so we do location. All right, now it's returning error here because you need to wrap it around a return statement, because it is a return thing, right? So it's a returning map. So now you wrap it around curly braces. Now it completely became a map object. Remember we did early at the beginning that map object would be most of the time wrapped around the curly braces. So that's what we have. Now we are returning this. Okay, yeah, so we created a method called toJson. You can call it anything, and the purpose of this method is that whatever data you supply to me, I'll take the data and turn it into a map object so that you can use it later. Okay, yeah, so now we can do print over here. So print user1 dot toJson. Okay, now let's print it. Oh, I think we have an error. Okay, excellent. Now as you can see, even though I created an object, because I convert whatever in the object to a map, so I can print them as a map once again. And we know that this kind of value is more accessible, right? Yeah. So you can create a lot more object. It doesn't matter. So I'll create object 2, object 3, and I'll just change the location, say Dhaka, and anyway, say India. All right, and well, I'm not going to print them now. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put them in a list variable. So what I would do, var list, I'll create empty list, and I'll add list.add, and I'll add user 1. Okay, yeah, so we'll add all the objects. Okay, so we are adding this user objects to a list. Okay, now definitely, as I said, that if you really want to use it later, you need to convert them to map object. But regardless, just go ahead and try to print it first. Let's see what happens. Okay, now as you see, just like earlier, it becomes the instance, but we really don't know what's inside, right? So that's why we are converting them to a map object using our method, or a lot of people call it converting them to JSON. So as I said earlier, they're almost similar. Okay, now let's go ahead and print them. Okay, beautiful. So as you see, we have each of the record and okay, sorry. So they're all different pretty much, right? Yeah, so Shanghai, Dhaka, and India. That's what you see. All right. Okay, so now things are being saved in our list variable. So that also means that we can print them, right? We can go through a for loop. So let's go ahead and do it. So list length and I++. So we could do print list I. Now it would print, sorry. So it would print each of the map object one by one. We'll see. Now here's the interesting thing. Now because it before we saved it in a list, it became a map object, right? So we can access them using our keys. So you just want the names or the countries, okay? Country. You just want the country from here. So you type in country, the key name, all right? Now let's print it out. Well, of course, I think it's better as a location because Dhaka is not a country, Shanghai is not a country, they're all cities anyway. So here I also need to change location. Let's run it. Okay, perfect. So that's what the beautiful thing about list and map. So what's happening here? Let me tell you one more time. So if you have data, you want the data to be a model and you want to create an object using that model and save it in database or somewhere in your application. So before you save it, you need to convert it to a map, okay, or to JSON object. Once you do that, now you can access them in a list. Okay, so that's how map and list, they work together very closely. So pretty much if you're using map, most likely you'll also use a list at the same time. So that's the most basic idea. So now that's one of the application where we use list and map. And another application, like for example, if you have a lot of JSON data coming, like if you're dealing with server returns a lot of JSON data, and we know that JSON format is also like this. All right, in that case you do the same thing. Okay, but now most of the time in Dart, if you have JSON data returning from the server, you want to decode it. Okay, so I think there is a method called JSON decode, like that. So all you need to do, throw your JSON file over here, the loaded JSON file, and it will return it as a map object to you like this. Okay, anyway, you need to save it somewhere, say list one. Okay, so whatever the JSON data coming from, first you decode it. I think I'm missing E, but anyway, there is a library I think we need to import. I'm not going to do that. So in Flutter, there is this method JSON decode. So the network data comes from network, and you throw it in the JSON decode, and then it becomes a list. Okay, yeah. Now once you have this list, you can use it whatever the way you want. Okay, hopefully it makes sense. So these are the two cases that you use list and map together. Anyway, so if you like the tutorial, if you learned something, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to smash that like button. Thank you so much.